Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Not a Scooby podcast. Today we are joined by Ayesha Islam. She is an illustrator and animator based in Edinburgh, working at Sunshine Marketing Agency. With almost 8 years of industry experience, she has worked with some of the biggest names in the UK, such as Royal Bank of Scotland, NatWest, and Highland Spring. So the episode, what do we discuss? We talk about the meticulous approach to project planning, the importance of collaboration, because obviously, particularly within a marketing agency, there are so many different moving parts. You need to get clearance from the client, the account manager. So there's so many moving parts and so many different people that need to be happy with the work that you're doing and why it's important to be easy to collaborate with. So Ayesha has a few tips and tricks on how to do that and how to do a better job of collaborating. Ultimately, it boils down to communication. And then finally, Ayesha is also a mentor at Edinburgh College, where she graduated from. During her time there, she really appreciated her experience and the knowledge and understanding she was able to gain from the mentors on offer to her as a student. So she wanted to give back as a mentor now with some industry experience. We dive into all of that in this week's episode of the Not a Scooby podcast. So as always, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy. Hi, Ayesha, and thank you for joining me on this week's episode of the Not a Scooby podcast. Let's just jump straight into things with my first question, which is, how much planning do you do before diving straight into a project? Do you find yourself just jumping straight into the mix and working away and learning as you go what suits this brand or this project best? Or do you find yourself doing a lot of preparation beforehand before getting into the thick of things?
So that's a really good question, because for me, especially in my current job right now, it's all very dependent on each project. So it's through like a project by project basis. How much time have we been given and how much do I really need to know before I can get started? So say if it's a new brand that I'm being put onto, and say they needed like some graphics done, I'm going to need then some time to sort of jump into their brand guidelines, have a look at that. Okay, let me see like their colors, their fonts, what's available to us as well. Like, has the client sent us all the little bits for their brands? So yeah, usually it's like, for me, it's starting a project file and just making sure I've got all my ducks in a row. Because I'm very meticulous about like how I lay out my files and things. I think it was instilled in me from college, making sure your files are set up and that you have all the bits that you need. So I think, but then there's some projects where it's just, maybe it's a brand we already have. So we already have everything, and this is a new sort of project we're doing on it. Then it's just a matter of, okay, let me look at maybe the presentation deck. Let's see what the concepts are, what the art direction is. Because often, it'll all be laid out like the style. We're looking for this style. So really, I would just use that as my basis to get started. But yeah, very rarely I would come into one not really knowing how I'm going to start it, because as long as I have the bits that I need, then it's very easy. I think where it gets difficult is if, okay, it's a completely brand new thing, client has nothing to give you, you're just going to have to create something. Then it's like, oh God, okay, then it becomes more of a team effort, because I think I'm very much a person who is a doer. So I kind of would want to just get in there and start laying things out, open up the Photoshop files and everything and just start playing on the artboards. Whereas I know some people, like back in the day, I used to sketch things out on pen and paper, like here's just a rough sort of wireframe of what I'm thinking. Nowadays, I just go straight in. I think it's because it's also, it takes up less time to just jump in and have everything laid out and start playing around, as opposed to sketching out and then doing the same thing again. So yeah, I'd say it's very product dependent and depending on the information, because you could get a really good brief, has all the bits, and client or whoever has given you everything you need, all the assets, or it can be completely new and different, in which case, yeah, it's more of a collaborative team effort where, okay, what do we think, guys? And it's also sort of where I would then rely on my art director to be like, hey, what are we thinking look wise? So
Yeah, because something I'm getting from you there is that I think often clients may think, oh, we're interested in hearing what you think, and they see a lot of creative freedom in that, and they think they're actually doing you a massive favor by saying, hey, just go crazy, do what you want.
yeah,
But I think John Evans said this on the Uncensored CMO podcast, that there's so much creative freedom in a tight brief. So if a client comes to you with a really tight brand guidelines, this is what we do, this is what we don't do, this is the kind of thing we like, that actually opens up so much freedom for you to then do your thing. Meanwhile, if there's absolutely no guidelines, that makes things a lot harder. And potentially, do you feel like in that case, when you're not given a great deal of guidance, you maybe play it a bit safer because you're not clear on, okay, how brave does this brand want to be, or not?
Yeah, no, 100%. And so typically, again, we would go off, say, a project presentation deck. So I would then have all the bits laid out, like here's what the art direction is going to be, here's sort of style of the shots that we're going for, and then say they want, like, yeah, the client wants a title or a logo to animate in before a video starts. Yeah, like I would always request that whoever's, editing the video, like, please give me 5 seconds at the beginning, 5 seconds at the end of like just, straight footage that doesn't move as much, or, that I can maybe add some effects onto. So sometimes they like would make it Scotch, it's like a beautiful dish on a plate, and it's in the end. I'm just going to add the logos. Sometimes, say, if the shot's quite busy in that there's lots of different elements, so maybe they're in the middle, there's the meal, the beautiful plate, and then the table dressing. It's going to be kind of hard to put a logo and text on that because it'll be difficult to read. So with that, say, extra 5 seconds at the end of the finished footage, which again, the footage, ideally, I love it if footage is finished, has all the sound effects, has all the music. But again, it's to do with timings. Maybe sometimes the editor is not going to have time to add all the music and sound effects. So then I can do that as well, but give me the sort of finished, color graded footage. So that works because then I can then just add my parts. And sometimes it's better because, say, if I'm animating a lot of things and like little pop-ups and tips, maybe I want to add little sound effects for those things. So it's a lot easier if I do it than, say, the video editor. But yeah, like going back to, say, maybe at the end frame, I would maybe put a blur on, or like maybe if I wanted to make things clearer, I might dim the footage to then add the logos on. So yeah, it's very much collaboration, because I mean, there are things that I could ask the video editor to do, make my life easy. I'll just work on the end frames and logos. But then other times it's about you need the sort of freedom, because I think if I had control of like my graphics on the footage, like if the footage allows me to have more control on it, then it's a lot more collaborative, and then I get to have I can add a bit more finesse, because it is also about like pride in your work. Like, I could just slap up, be done with it, but it's like putting in that extra couple of minutes just to really give it like the Ayesha twist or whatever.
And I really love what you do with specifically the Make It Scotch stuff, when it's because the thing with food content is that there's only so many dishes that people can create. So it's like, okay, when someone's scrolling, how do they know that this is like a Make It Scotch video, and it doesn't get mixed up with all the other brands that they might be following as well? But particularly like the animations and the characters I think I saw one where you had like meatballs and you gave them all their little different personalities. Like, that's fantastic because it's so unique. And sure, the dish, like say meatballs, is something that I'm sure a bunch of other brands have also done. But have they turned those meatballs into little characters? And it just adds so much more personality and that brand identity and uniqueness to Make It Scotch, which is lovely.
Yeah, no, I do enjoy getting to add my little twist, because again, the fact that I'm getting to illustrate as well, that's like a skill that it only started as a hobby for me. So being able to just even do a bit of drawing on like a live project for a client, who's like paying for it, it's like, oh, this is great, because
Mhm.
I would draw in my spare time. So getting to add a bit of personality. Because I think for me, working in social, you kind of learn that the ones that like the brands and influencers who do really well are those who are trying to be authentic and add personality, and a unique point of view. And not all brands can do that. Some brands are very corporate and stale. So, it's like, oh yeah, who's going to really follow them, on social media? Whereas if
Mhm.
you add a bit of personality, a bit of maybe human touches here and there, and also it's like, with Make It Scotch, it's delicious food and it's like proudly Scottish food. So there's already a personality there, as opposed to, I don't know, like a laptop brand or something.
Mhm. Yeah, and once again, it seems often with this podcast, my only point of reference is Uncensored CMO with John Evans, but he works at System One, and they're all about analyzing adverts and what emotions people felt and how strongly they felt those emotions. And one thing that's became really clear through their analysis is that brands with potentially lower budgets, they can't afford to be safe, because there's one, particularly with, say, Jaguar's rebrand, there's a massive thing about comparing. Look how Apple, look how Instagram, look how Nike, how their logos have evolved over the years, and they've actually all become sort of photocopies of themselves. And you could argue that Instagram's icon logo from like 2005 was actually a lot more interesting and had a lot more personality than it does now. But sure, when you're a massive global company like that, you can afford to play it safe because people are already interested in you. Meanwhile, if you're a smaller brand, then you can't afford to be so safe. You need to do something a bit braver, a bit more you, to stand
Yeah.
out, so that people notice you. So maybe more people should be using illustration and animation at work to stand out.
Yeah. I mean, a picture speaks 1,000 words. Why not add some doodles on it? What
Mm-hmm.
else can I say?
Yeah, exactly. So when you're doing these illustrations, do you have like iPad linked up to your laptop, or are you like, what are you actually using
So
technically?
I use a Wacom tablet. So Wacom, I think, is a very good tablet brand. So it's basically like a graphics tablet. So it kind of replaces a mouse. And I've been using one since college. And yeah, it's basically just sort of tablet type thing with a pen. And like depending on what model you get, you do get ones that have like a screen, so you can just draw on the screen. So it acts as like second one. But yeah, no, I think I've just been so used to using like the pens because I feel like the mouse, it's quite like honestly, I don't think anyone can draw with mouse. I think it's ridiculous. You need the pen. And I think just yeah, growing up coloring and drawing and doing lots of art in high school, like when I discovered that, oh, I don't have to use a mouse to create things, like it just opened my eyes. Because otherwise before it was like drawing with shapes, which is fine, but I mean I much prefer a graphics tablet than say using the pen tool on any software, because then it's just so clean and precise. And with drawing, you kind of want some embellishments and imperfections.
Hmm. So does that also, with that piece of technology, does that allow you to, for example, if you press harder, then it's like
Yes,
a thicker stroke and stuff
yes,
like that?
yeah. So
Yeah.
basically, yeah, trying to do all the things of like real pen and paper, or like like a paintbrush. It's like like Japanese katakana writing and all that. Um, yeah, like depending on your brush strokes, the harder you press with the brush, the thicker the strokes are, and then it's thinner if you lighten up. So yeah, I think again, it's trying to give that feel that am I able to express like as much as I'm trying to express through my creativity and my art. And
Mhm.
yeah, I feel like a mouse isn't going to be able to do that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And with these videos that you're illustrating on top of, so the video is probably in all likelihood recorded in either 25 frames per second or 60 frames per second,
Mhm.
which basically, for anyone listening, just means that it's literally 25 photos taken per second, or it's 60 photos
taken per second. So when you're animating, are you drawing one animation per frame, or are you jumping every now and then? Are you doing like one for every 3 frames?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think to be able to draw on 24 frames per second would be amazing. Like I know one of my favorite music videos is Aha's Take on Me. Like that one was I think that was drawn at between 15 to 20 frames, which is still quite a lot. And I would love to, because it just makes the transition and the movement so smooth. But just time, like no one really has time. I think the standard in the industry is 12 for animation. And I think it just depends on how smooth you want things to look. So me personally, if I'm doing like drawing on top of things in like a rough paintbrush style, so it's not smooth like pen, like ballpoint pen style. If I'm doing it like a rough paintbrush that's got little splatters and imperfections, then I feel like that looks better in 12 frames where it's kind of jumpy. Because then it gives it that more childlike, like funny, childlike, bouncy sort of animation style, as opposed to very smooth and lucid, like say Studio Ghibli movie. Like those are just beautiful and stunning. But I think, yeah, just doing sort of individual lines, because I don't really do full color painted like animation. Like that's like a whole other level. Mine are just little like single line doodles, like little stick men and stuff like that. So I feel like for those it works being 12 frames, because then it's a bit jittery, but the movement is there's still enough frames that the movement is very clear, and it's kind of nice that it's separate from the footage. It doesn't always have to integrate.
Mm-hmm. And is that the lowest you would ever go? Would you ever go less than 12 for, say, a 24 frame shot?
I mean, I suppose I could. I've never really tried it though. I think I also know there's like animating in ones and animating on twos. So one frame is like one aspect of a drawing, and then it continues to the next frame, but then the third frame is a slightly different one. So I know they use that in Into the Spider-Verse, which is like a Marvel. It's a Marvel animated movie, and that one was beautifully done. And so yeah, I don't know. I still feel like, even though I say yeah, I've animated, I can draw, and it's called frame by frame animation. That's what that is, the old Disney style. I'm still very new at it. Like I've only really been doing from what I know and what I understand about frame by frame animations and drawings. So I've still got a lot to learn. But yeah, I have been enjoying it. But yeah, it's so time consuming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you referencing Studio Ghibli, because I think it was Spirited Away. There's one crowd shot, and I can't remember how long it took them, but it took them like months, because obviously they're so heavy on like world building. Like every character that we come across needs to have their own personality, their own way of moving, their own everything. There's no real copy and pasting.
Exactly.
With Studio Ghibli, meanwhile, say Disney, the big example is always the dance sequences in some of the older Disney films are literally copy and pasted between each princess film, because no one notices. It's oh, we've got 2 different characters. Or the Fox version of Robin Hood, which I loved growing up, and there's Jungle Book. They both have they have 2 bears, so they just use Bare Necessity and one of the songs from Robin Hood are like the same animation. But yeah, Studio Ghibli are not like that. They seem to be like, no, where every single thing needs to be so unique and different. But as you said, that's why they only release a film like every 5-6 years.
Yeah. And also like, in Disney, say like there's a shot of like people dancing, the crowds aren't moving. The crowds are just flat painted. Whereas Studio Ghibli, oh no, here's a crowd shot. Every single one of them must move. And it's like, oh my God, you don't really need to do that because no one's really going to notice. But yeah, that just shows time and craft.
Definitely. And I think when it comes to, say, social content, it's not to say that it is important that it's budget friendly and and be quick. Like you can't spend 6 months working on a piece of social content that people may see once and scroll by, and the algorithm will, since you scrolled by it once, you're never going to see it again. So it is important that things are still budget friendly. And I think on that note, when the clients hear, oh, we're going to add some illustration onto this video, do you feel like the perception is that it should take a lot less time than it does? Or do you feel like people are now gaining an understanding of, oh yeah, we understand it's illustration, so that takes a lot of time? Or do you feel like people maybe sometimes see illustration as potentially a cheaper alternative to like video production, as if it's going to take less time, less effort, but in reality, you are actually, it takes so much time because you're not only being creative, but you literally are drawing every, say, third.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, because I think depending on, I mean, so far, touch wood, I really haven't had any issues with clients being like, oh, that's going to be like, so say like frame by frame animating on top of footage. Like, oh, you're saying that's going to be another whole half day. Like, oh, we don't want that. We haven't really had any of that. Like, they sort of understand that, oh, okay, yeah, no, we get it. Because again, I think one of the selling points here is, at least for me, is like it's all bespoke. I'm not, grabbing some Shutterstock image, stuff like that. Like, I'm hand doing it for you. So understand. So there's a mutual understanding, like, yeah, this is like bespoke. This is for our brand. It's being made for our brand. So yeah, we respect that. I mean, saying that, there are some times where you can get away with, I mean, there's little tricks that I've sort of learned on how to maybe speed up certain things. Like, say I have a logo to animate and I want it to look, so the logo is like a sketched word. I can sketch the word and do it frame by frame if I wanted, or a quicker way is have the full word written out and just mask, use a mask each letter out, so then it looks like it's being written. So that would be, I guess, the cheat, quick way of doing it, which I think most clients kind of go for. Like these. So
you're sort of reverse engineering it.
Yes, exactly.
You're starting at the end and then going backwards. Okay.
Yeah. But again, I think that only works if it is something that looks hand drawn. So it's like a logo that looks like a signature. Instead of me doing it myself by hand, if it's their logo and it looks like a signature, yeah, I'll just mask it. I'll just follow it like that. So again, it's you can get really into the nitty gritty about it. It has to be like, does it look like it was drawn with a pencil, or does it look like it's done with a ballpoint pen? Because that'll then thingy the animation. Because if it's like a rough texture, I feel like it should be hand, like frame by frame. But if it's smooth, then I think a smoother transition works, but still gives the idea that, yeah, this was written out.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I actually had a recent discussion with Owen Meldrum, someone I went to uni with, and he has recently moved into live streaming because he found that trying to create a video production company with his friends was often quite difficult, because the people he was collaborating with were often like, I need this lens for this project, and I need this new piece of equipment. And he's like, but will the client notice? And I think being I'm not in your shoes, you say there's a different brushstroke between a pencil and a pen. I'm like, okay, but is the client gonna have any clue? And that's no offense to the client, because I wouldn't know. But do you feel like maybe subconsciously we cannot tell? There is a difference, and that does actually have an impact on the final video.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's because then we're diving into like, personal, like people taking things personally, I guess. It's like, yeah, like this project is more than just a project. This is like my baby. Which again is quite often difficult in the creative industries, like on one hand, listen, like the client wants X, we will give them X with a bit of Y. And then, yeah, then it'll go. But then it's like, oh, but I'm not happy with the way I did the Y. Like, could we? And it's like, I don't know. Like, no, there's just no more time. Or another way is, oh, actually, yeah, see that, it's not working. Let's try something else. And then you're like, but I spent so long on that. So, yeah, like, it's funny. I do tell so I mentor students at Edinburgh College. And often I say, like, Like, you can't be too precious these days. But then saying that, it's so hard not to, because the thing about, being creative, you are kind of putting a bit, like, it's coming from you. So it's like, it's going to be personal, whether you like it or not. It's just understanding, like, will the client notice? I guess, not really. I think it's more you as a person. And I don't know, depending on where it is you're working, like, feeling like, oh, well, if you had 5 minutes extra, what would you do? What would you add to it? And just doing that, I think that's so much better than being like, oh, you're out of time. No more embellishments. That's it. And no one's going to notice. I would much rather, I would be more persuaded into following my creative director. He's very much all about, if you had the extra 5 minutes, what would you do? Or look at the work. What do you think? Are you happy with it? And I think those sort of questions are really good and really important. And especially for like your own learning and development and just having pride in your work. Like, I have worked in certain places where, yeah, you can tell they just don't care anymore. It's like the client wants this, we're giving them this. That's it. No more. Don't do anything extra. There's no point. It's a waste of money. Whereas, everyone knows the more time you put into something, the more valuable it is anyway. So whether you're doing it for the client or for yourself, it's always worth doing, I think, because there's always going to be a payout. So no, I think the clients will rarely ever notice if, say, one of my animation frames, it's like, oh, it's misaligned. I went too far left instead of right. No, they're not going to notice, but I'm going to notice, and that's what's going to piss me off.
I do think it's really interesting that you do the mentorship. Can we speak about that a little bit? How did you get into that? Where did that come from?
Yeah, so I think it started, so I went to Edinburgh College. So that's where I got my degree in visual communication, graphic design. And this was back, I graduated in 2016. So, but when we did the mentorship program, we did it, I think, for the first time. So we were one of the few that, for some reason, 2015 was the year. Let's just do loads of new things for the first time. And so one of them was they launched the mentorship program, which in 2015, I think there was 7 or 8 agencies in Edinburgh. I don't know if half of them even exist anymore, or they probably changed names. But yeah, every student in the class, so I think we got 2 mentors each. They were basically there just throughout our final year of college, just to sort of help us on projects. So we would work, we would get a new project every month. So we'd have 4 weeks to work on this one big campaign idea, and then we'd present it. And basically had the choice of, showing our work at whatever stage to the mentors. And I was really fortunate. I got 2 guys, I think it's Dan and David. And at the time they worked at TVA agency. They were great. And it was funny because personality wise, they were completely different to me. I'm happy little fairy, oh my God, hi, look my work, what do you think? And they were just very calm, collected. They've been in the creative industries for years. They're like, okay, yeah, this isn't nice. I mean, I might change the wording there. And, they would always give me sort of they were trying to give me the least amount of advice because they very much wanted me to get to the end result myself. And I just found that so helpful. So then, because of their help, I also won an award. So I won the DMA awards for in 2015. It was a student category, but basically got to go to the award show. I was against 4 other students from universities in London, and they all worked in groups, and I was on my own, the only girl from Scotland who came down, and I beat them all, and I was like, holy shit, this is insane. So honestly, yeah, I think that's sort of why I'm so fond of the mentor program, because it helped me in so many ways, whether it was just the confidence boost or just understanding the whole feedback amendment sort of way of working. Because it's very easy for tutors and teachers to just be like, oh yeah, this is lovely, that's fine. But when there's actual stakes involved, it's oh no, you're getting advice from a real industry professional. So that's why after graduating, did a few years in the industry, and then I got invited to come back. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to do it. So I've been doing it for, I think, 5 years now, on and off. And yeah, I've had some amazing students, and some of which have gone off to win awards. And I'm like, hey, even if I didn't directly help it's just knowing that, oh, I'm someone that you can talk to if you have any issues or queries. Like just knowing that you have some help in the industry. Because I think back then, like one of the main things that also helped me was just names to faces. Just get yourself out there and known. And every email that you get from an industry professional, fucking write it down, keep it close. You never know how many years after you graduate, you might just want to, let me just fire my portfolio to this person real quick. Like, what do you think? What do you think I should improve on? And I love that. I think it's just part of the grind of the industry nowadays.
Mm-hmm. And what is you've mentioned a few pieces of advice that you often pass on to them. Is there anything else, maybe less so specifically about illustration animation, but just going into the creative industry, as you said, this sort of classic of like your network is your net worth. It's all about not what you know.
Yeah, it's who you know.
I'm not sure how much there's a middle ground between. You've got to be half decent.
True.
But yes, definitely knowing people is a massive help. Is there anything else? Like you said, like the collaborative process, I think a lot of people coming out of college, coming out of uni are quite, it is funny because one thing I often reflect on myself is that I feel like I used to be actually a lot more confident in college and uni about my work. But I think the reality is I was overly confident and absolutely I had no idea what was going on. Like I said in a previous episode, I genuinely thought the only difference between me and David Fincher or me and Steven Spielberg was, they've got this whole budget. And if I had that budget, I'd be doing that. And it's like how delusional I was. And Alex Cormack introduced me to this concept of the idiot mountain, of when you're starting off on a mountain, you're looking up. And when you're starting on your journey, you know so little. And you think, I've actually really got the hang of this. Well, the more you know, the more you move up this mountain of knowledge, you realize, oh no, I've got so much further to go. And it's that knowledge and understanding that you basically come to the conclusion that all I know is that I know nothing, which is nice and it's humbling, and it actually just shows that you have progressed and you have grown. So, pieces of advice like that, how important they need to be, not only when they're working, but building new relationships and friendships. Is there anything along those lines that you often find yourself passing on to your students?
Yeah, I mean, one of them is, which I think is just the fundamental of like me and how I've gotten to where I am, is never stop learning. Like for me, like it's funny that you use like the mountain analogy from Alex. For me, it's all about the toolbox. So in college or uni, whatever it is you're studying, you sort of leave, after you graduate, you leave with a basic toolbox, basic tools that you need, So in the creative sense, all the Adobe stuff. But then you don't really learn all the Adobe software. You're like, I left only knowing 3, and that was Adobe InDesign, Adobe Illustrator, and Photoshop. That was it. And even those 3, didn't really know them that well, So I left with those basic tools. And then, years into the industry now, I know After Effects. I'm learning DaVinci, thanks to Alex. And I did a bit of Adobe XD, which is like web design and things like that. So there's so many new avenues that I've learned. And same with like, working together in a team. Because you're right, like I think in uni and college, it's all quite competitive. Everyone's trying to be the best. Especially when it comes to like entering competitions, it's like, don't look at my idea and stuff like that. When really in the real world, everything has to be out in the open. Like you can't really be hiding your ideas from your creative director or whatever. Like it needs to be open. And so that's also another thing I tell the students, like always be learning, because I don't really think, especially in this industry, you can ever stop. And also there's so many tools that you can use. Like there's been projects where I didn't know how to do a certain thing. I didn't say no to the project. I just said, yeah, I might just need maybe a bit of extra time, like an extra hour, just so I can learn it. And how do I do that? I just go on YouTube. I go on Google, everything is just so easy and accessible now. Having the basic tools is great, but see if you've got like the big, I don't know, like plumber's toolbox that's just huge and filled to the brim with stuff. That just makes you all the more desirable and more profitable, and it just makes you a really kick-ass creative. And always be open, show other people your work, see what they think. You don't have to necessarily agree, But I mean, one of the most humbling things is, God, after graduating, you make your portfolio. Years down the line, you go back to update it and you're like, Jesus Christ, these look terrible. Like, I remember my graduation project, I was just looking at it like, oh God, there's so many extra slides. I'm talking crap. There's like spelling mistakes, and you just get straight to the point. I think, yeah, a lot of college, you're waffling, you're bullshitting on your presentations. Like, this is why this color works here and there. And it's like in real life, most people just kind of want to see the end thing. Like, oh, this is the problem. This was the concept. This was the solution. And this is how you created it. Great. That's like another thing I tell the students: streamline everything. Yeah, turn this paragraph into a sentence type deal.
And I think, given the, I suppose, era, you can call it, that we're in now, it's very interesting that you say that we should always be learning, always be keeping up to date with new things. And obviously, AI has become a massive part. And not only creatively, I think, as creatives, there's been a massive focus around how is this affecting creativity.
Yeah.
But it really is affecting everyone. Say dentistry, I've realized it's affected them and how they read radiographs and things. Also nursing, there's a company in the US that are trying to they're trying to change the role of nurses by having people do like GP appointments by an AI. They're talking to an AI generated image, and they're giving them the anecdote or whatnot, and analyzing their symptoms and telling them what they should do next and if they need rest or whatnot. So it is very interesting. Obviously, that's not been rolled out yet, but it's certainly something that's been worked on, which is not only scary for many reasons, but also, yeah, it's interesting that it's so widespread. It is literally affecting every single job under the sun.
Yeah.
But going back to creativity, particularly with illustration, animation, do you feel like, whether it's specifically AI in a general sense or anything, any specific softwares like, for example, Canva, do you feel like they've changed people's perception of illustration? And has there maybe been a new wave of people that look at it and think, particularly say logo design, people just look at it and think, oh, I'll go on a free website that can generate me my logo, because I don't actually need something that complicated and I'm not that fussy. So I'm just going to do this. How do you feel about these softwares, these developments that's happening within the industry? Do you lean into it? Are you kind of keeping a close eye? Well, I'm interested to see what AI is doing, but I'm not going to become some sort of AI specialist, because there is Midjourney are doing a very interesting thing at the moment where you can generate a photo, which is your first frame in Midjourney, and I think you bring it into Runway. So you can generate an AI image that is your first frame, and you can generate an AI image that is your final frame. And sort of like a node tree on DaVinci, you give them the start and the end, and it will fill in the gaps. And I thought, particularly with animation, that's scary for a lot of reasons, because you're like, hold on, exactly as you're saying, it takes so much time to draw in twos that oh no, if I can just generate my B starts here and my B ends here, and the AI generates the flipping to, so that's kind of scary.
Yeah, no, that is. I mean, I also like with the new launch of Sora, I don't know if you saw Sora, like that's just a full AI video, you know? So yeah, it's a love-hate one for me, particularly, because I think parts that I hate is obviously me as an illustrator, or anyone who draws and creates original artwork, you know, in their own style, you know, it's their style. The fact that it can be taken and then, you know, reworked on, and then like sold for pennies or whatever, or for free, you know, I think that is just essentially that's pretty much theft. You know, that's like, there's so many privacy, copyright laws and things for, you know, other works. But with AI, it's like, oh, but none of those apply to AI. And I'm like, nah, that's bullshit, because the AI has to get its ideas from somewhere. You know, a real person with a real cool style. But then on the other hand, I think seeing it as a tool for helping, say, streamline things, I think that's more like, where I go into like, this is why I think it's good. So really only to streamline, I think that's what it should really be used for. Like, we're struggling to come up with, say, like a storyboard, like they want pictures of like certain things, very specific actor looks and styles. We've been using some to sort of showcase like, okay, here's a short video. So in an increasingly busy world where everything has to be done by tomorrow or today or now, it's like, I get it where, listen, at least as long as we're going to shoot the final thing, do it ourselves, I don't mind AI being used in that sense. So where I actually use AI a lot is the AI generative tool in Photoshop. Here's a landscape image. Can we make it portrait by just extending the sky or the ground? Now, obviously, the old-fashioned way would be try and find another image to maybe replace the sky. So cut that sky out, put it over this image, cut this ground up, put it over this image. Instead, I just highlight the parts I want to extend, generative fill with whatever, and it just does it, and it does it pretty well. So that's sort of the only way that I use it, because then I'm like, okay, I've extended my image, now I have space to add my titles, add my drawings, my doodles, whatever. So I'm still doing the end thing. It's just helping me get to that end thing quicker. So
that makes a lot of sense.
Love and hate.
So I think you made some very good points there about AI. I think maybe a misinterpretation is that the AI is creating something, which is not generating based off things that you've fed it. And I think one of the big sort of ethical questions around it is it feels like we're being put in a position where we have to opt out. The default is that you're fine with your work being used for AI, and you have to intentionally opt out of it. Whether it's going into your Instagram settings and ticking boxes, or Facebook ticking a box saying do not use this for AI. Well, I feel like the default should be no, you're not allowed to use it for AI unless I accept your T's and C's.
Exactly.
And then also with that, it's a wonder of, okay, how much do we really understand what that means about, yes, I'm saying you can use what I'm saying in ChatGPT for AI, but do we really realize what that means, or say particularly voice? Because in Descript, for example, you can, if it has a certain amount of minutes of your voice, it can then generate it. So then I can just type in text. If I just wanted to do a voiceover, or I did a misstep in this interview, I can then go in and type a different answer altogether. So and then it will generate it pretty accurately. And I came across, which is crazy, the Joe Rogan Experience AI generated. So it was Joe Rogan speaking to Steve Jobs.
I saw that
for an hour, and I was watching it, and then I was like, "Hey, this is crazy," because it sounds all legit. Secondly, it's even crazier because they're actually having an interesting conversation. You're like, you put an AI and an AI, and I'm actually engaged with it. I'm actually being entertained, and that's scary, and that's wild. And I was watching a conference yesterday for AI specialists at an event, one of them specializing in how it's going to affect the film industry. So, and they were quite big advocates for, we always want to have creative people behind the camera. It should always start with human. But how particularly production might change is that the director might just do one take and say, yeah, we've got it, because you can then manipulate those performances in post. As I said, you can change a line here, and you can now also, another thing Descript does, which is crazy, is that it can lock your eyes to the camera. So say I'm reading a teleprompter off here, and I've tried it a few times. It's not great. It's not perfect yet. But say I'm reading a teleprompter here, and I can do like track eye to camera, but then my eyes all align to as if I'm, which is just like, okay, that's wild. But yeah, so that's maybe how it will affect things. Maybe projects I've been a part of with Sunshine potentially won't take a full day to do. It'll take half a day, because you only need literally one take of everything, and you know what you can and can't fix in post. So yeah, I guess we'll just have to, sort of go with the flow a bit and see what happens. And I think it is particularly interesting, you being a mentor and students that are potentially just joining the industry now. how that should potentially be at the forefront of their minds of it will affect them particularly because they're coming into this new AI era.
Yeah, because I think it is very difficult, especially at like the junior or even just the introduction phase. Because you're right, like a lot of like Canva and like stock images and just AI generated stuff. Say like a new small business, I'm not going to go to like, because I think when I graduated college, I did a bit of freelance. Me coming out of college, obviously I would back in the day spend like hours, maybe days designing one logo, doing all the different colorways and shapes and all of that. Whereas now all those little entry level stuff, it is going to get replaced with AI. Like small businesses aren't really going to reach out to, fresh new designers and stuff. And because they can then just, I don't know, get their nephew or niece to go online and maybe make one on Canva or something. So it is a tough one, which is why, again, I say keep learning, build your toolbox. I mean, already like some of my mentees, they're knowing like 5 other softwares more than I did when I left college. So I'm like, you guys are already doing pretty good. But it's so competitive, and especially for anything entry level, it's just so hard. And also you get those bloody LinkedIn ads of people looking for a junior designer who's got 5 years experience in this, and this. And it's like, bro, like, and you're paying them what? Like, no.
Or it's like, we've got an entry level position, but by that they mean, no, you need 3 years of experience under your belt. It's like, well, how are we ever going to get an entry? It is that paradox, that endless loop of, well, I can't get those positions if I don't get any experience, but everyone wants experience, so how am I going to get any?
Exactly.
Yeah, is tricky. So I've got a few quick fire questions.
Oh, okay.
So, and these are a bit more playful, so potentially not as relevant. But what is one animated film that everyone should watch?
Oh God, you're really putting me on the spot now. Okay, no, it has to be Into the Spider-Verse. Yeah,
really?
Marvel, animated film with Miles.
So
Morales.
is that the first one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the first and the second one, God tier. So I'd say that's amazing because also music, they're very good at the sound design there. But that style, the like painted 2D but 3D sort of look, it kind of started with Spider-Verse. So that's why I have to just be like, hey, they did it first. They did it amazing. So Into the Spider-Verse.
See, for me, when it comes to animation, my background or my interest more so in it comes from anime. So it's like,
actually, yeah. Okay.
Like Naruto.
Yes, Naruto.
When we speak about like as you said, not drawing for every single frame. I can't remember. I watched a video essay on it once about how they did like Naruto fight scenes because they are so fluid and different ones are different. So it's like, but the level of detail is absolutely insane to me.
Yeah,
and it was just blowing my mind.
The camera angles and the focus point. It's like, say there's a scene where someone kicks one of the shurikens up. It's like, the way the camera is, it's like, you can tell that shuriken's going to come down and do something. So it's like, it's the anticipation. I think that's what it is. You're animating anticipation. And that's what you're kind of constantly doing. So that the next scene has to realign. Like there's never scenes that don't make sense because they've always got the anticipation. Like this happened here, so now let's anticipate the next thing, moving along. And that sort of keeps your eye on the screen.
One of the other things they said was, as you said, that center point that's how, and this also applies just to video production as well, is if you're doing a montage, it's like, so like the eye track, if shot one, someone's framed like this, and then shot 2, someone's framed like this, and you're cutting between it so quickly, it's going to be too jarring. Well, you can literally cut between things, hold on something for less than half a second, if everything is basically tracked to the same point, because then the audience's eye line doesn't need to jump around the frame. 100%. They can actually keep up with what's going on. And particularly when, say, a fight scene, whether it's Fast and Furious or it's like an anime fight scene, that seems to apply so much because it's so fast paced, but you're still able to keep track on what's happening, and it's not totally jarring. Meanwhile, things like what was that one that Liam Neeson did? That franchise, I find you Taken.
Yeah.
But they were terrible for their like handheld camera. But there's an example of he's climbing over a fence and it uses like 7 different camera angles, and it's just like I haven't seen anything here. And he's climbed over a fence. So why are we using 7 different angles? The reality is we're using 7 different angles because he can't climb over a fence, and we need to use the double, and we need to.
Oh yeah, it's not fast enough, so we cut to make it look like it's fast.
That's one of the examples of everyone's always saying that's a terrible piece of editing there because it's so jarring.
That, and I think it was one of the Jason Bourne ones as well. It was a fight scene where Matt Damon and obviously a stunt double or someone, but the cuts, like they're literally wrestling in some office, beating the shit out of each other against the walls, but you couldn't see anything. Like there's a fist going, and in the next scene they're like, I don't know, wrestling, and it's like, wait, where's the anticipation? Where's the smooth transition to the next fight move? None of that. So yeah, no, I can't deal with those sort of fight scenes.
Yeah, I must say that's probably one of my favorite things with animation is, yes, I love the peaceful like autumn vibes of Studio Ghibli films.
Yeah,
a lot of the time, but to me it's like when I'm actually impressed and amazed by the technicality of things, it is often those more dramatic, those fight scenes, and things, because I'm like, oh, how have they done this so well? And then I get very into it, even though I literally have no idea what I'm talking about. I just like the look of it.
Yeah, but the thing is, with like frame by frame animation in that anime style, the old classic Disney style, every frame counts. Like you can't waste any of it, really. So that's why I think everything has just that little, well, not a little bit, a lot more detail. Whereas say, like a live action shot fight scene, you can just cut bits out that don't work. Whereas with like frame by frame, it's like, no, we have to solidify everything that we're going to draw. And say maybe if there's just a sequence or a chapter in the story that we don't need, then they get rid of those. And it's always heartbreaking to hear. Like even with stop motion and like animation, I don't know if you know much about those. My favorite one is Coraline. Like by Leica Studios, it's amazing. Like they did Paranorman, I think they also helped on Nightmare Before Christmas, ages ago. So yeah, like again, just meticulous, takes years to do one, and then sometimes because I don't know about you, but I'm also someone who watches like behind the scenes a lot of like anything I consume. I want to see the behind the scenes. I want to see the blooper reel. I want to hear the interviews and what everyone thought about their character, the costume design, the lighting, the set, everything. I want to know every meticulous detail, which is also why I still buy Blu-rays of movies that come out, because I'm like, fuck subscriptions and just only be able to watch them on a continuously. What if I don't have Wi-Fi? I like to have hard stuff because they also have all the extra material.
I think when it comes to stop motion, one of the examples I can think of in recent years is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio.
Yes, loved it.
They've got the monkey character, and it's one thing for like human-like characters.
Yeah.
Okay, kind of understand how they move. But when you've got like a monkey who's swinging from branches and telephone poles and running on all fours, they've similarly got a time lapse and a featurette of how they made that. I believe it's actually on Netflix. Of specifically how they animated the monkey character, and it's just crazy. And that was something I was going to ask actually. For example, if you're animating bees, as you did with Do Bees Sleep, Alex Cormac's short film, who's also been on the podcast, how much time goes into, for example, are you watching videos of bees move beforehand? I mean, how do bees actually move? Because Alex did some crazy stuff with that, because I asked him, since he composited some bees, he was like, I would get a real video of a bee and I would track a null object to it and then put my bee on there, which is just crazy time consuming. Because he was like, oh, because if they don't move with intention and they move aimlessly, and then they look like
flies. Yeah.
So do you have to do a similar process? Which, because I'm just like, oh yeah, we know what bees are like. We see bees all the time. So did you similarly pay a great deal of attention to stuff like that?
Well, I'm happy to say when it comes to drawing and animating, like, stop frame and doodles, you don't need to, because I think that's the beauty of illustrations. it's all like an imagination. It's a creative interpretation. That's what it is. So, you know, for me, if I had to think of a reference, I'm thinking Winnie the Pooh. Like I grew up watching a lot of Winnie the Pooh, and there's lots of bees always being animated. And again, they always leave that beautiful little trail, dotted lines behind them. And like, so that's sort of what I did. I was like, no, I'm just gonna have little swirls. Like I'll figure out my route, and I'll just have the bee do that. Because yeah, I could go super technical and do what Alex did, but I was like, no, this is like a nice sort of imagination. And again, it was like playing on the childlike fantasy that I had. So in Do Be Sleep, there's like flashbacks to when they were a child, and so yeah, I was like, let's just keep it nice and imaginative, sparkly, fairy-like. So yeah, so I can get away with that. I think I don't. Yeah, when it comes to illustrating things, you can take liberties because it's an expression.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I'm far more in your camp. We've got some creative license here. Then in the Alex camp of let's watch hours of bees and really, I just don't. That's where me and Alex are just on different levels. He's just on a whole different level of like, attention to detail. I'm like, creative license. I love it. Favorite project you have worked on in 2024 and why?
That is a good one. God, I mean, I'd say right now we're working on a food client, and they're quite fun, both in terms of the look and like just the style. So they're a brand called Mitsuba, and they do snacks. So like fun sort of like, and the snacks are all inspired by like Asian flavors. So they've got like Thai chili crispies or wasabi peas, and like various other snack things. So it is more like a luxury snack item. But I think what I've loved about it is I've kind of been able to do like a wide breadth of things. So there was print elements, social elements, and then digital elements, and like, you know, posters and things. So I've got to do bits of like all the fields that I know, because I sort of started more print heavy. So business cards and other sort of like printed media, like magazines and stuff. So now, and then came to Sunshine, and I'm doing a lot more digital. But it was nice to see how I can get the brand to work across everything. Because let me tell you, like, their main thing is they use a lot of neon. So neon is one of their styles, but neon looks very different in print than it does in digital. So it's like making sure all the colors work. And also, yeah, of course, their main color is black. So it's like, does this black look right in all the forms? And so, yeah, I think technically it's been my most varied. And then in terms of the work, I think we just launched. So they did a big launch in W.H. Smith. And so that's sort of where you'll find their snacks. And I basically got to create 5 different digital screens. So I don't know if you've been to a W.H. Smith in the airport, but the entire outside is just a screen. And so I got to animate snacks bursting in and little like powder explosions here and there, and just animate like, Mitsuba, and then the packs flying in and explosions and all that. So I think that was just really fun, because it was like the most ridiculous sizes. Like we're talking like, if one was I think 8K wide, and it was just super wide, and I was like, oh god, this file is so big. And so yeah, it was very interesting. So yeah, I think those are live, they're out. So if you're traveling this Christmas, which God help you, you might see it. So yeah, I think that's what I've enjoyed most.
Yeah, that does sound fun. And it's very interesting that there is a difference between print and digital and social, because I was kind of like, oh yeah, what is the difference? But it makes total sense that certain elements don't translate, certain colors maybe don't translate.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
digital.
And it sounds...
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, digital, we're working with RGB, whereas with print, it's CMYK. And all of those like vary. So you've got hex codes, and then you've got Pantones, and all these different, like color variations. It's a minefield for sure, but you're good at what you do. It's a good thing.
What is that second one?
Pantone. No.
Mm-hmm. What is that?
Oh,
and
so Pantone.
CMYK. Did I say that right?
Oh yes, CMYK. So C stands for the cyan, M is magenta, Y is yellow, and K is black. So if you've ever used a printer, your ink cartridges are CMYK. Because those are all the colors you need to, I guess, create all the colors in print, which is insane. It's just those 4 variables. And then, RGB is red, green, and blue. But yeah, Pantone is pretty much the CMYK. So Pantone has a color of the year every year, but they're like the gods of all color, really, for print. So, you get, I say print also in like paints, when you're buying paint for your walls to decorate a home, you can get Pantone colors. And yeah, it's like a massive Bible. I think like most agencies that work in advertising will have one. There's a Pantone color guide. Not gonna lie, they're pretty expensive. Some of them can go up to like 200 quid. It's like the best way to make sure you're color matching. And depending on brands, a good brand will have a brand guideline that has all their colors in both RGB and CMYK. And I guess the more luxury brands will have Pantones and hex codes. Hex codes are just, I guess, the digital equivalent. It's like, here's a code of like letters and numbers, and this equals that color. So I don't know. For me, I just love that, like seeing how, okay, so this is the digital version of their brand. I mean, this is the print version. And sometimes, like, if you're really, I don't know, anal about it, like some people just want it to be the exact same, but others are fine, kind of okay with, you know what, let's make the print version maybe more moody and keep the digital one more bright and uplifting, So yeah, that's something that's like always good to know. And if you can ever get your hands on a Pantone color guide, like those things are rare. It's like gold dust. It's like, I don't know. I just like looking at different color swatches. I think I loved it as a kid, going to B&Q and picking paints and stuff like that. Like, oh, mom, I like this color. And then laughing at the names because they're always ridiculous.
So why do you need the book? To me, I'm totally ignorant about this stuff because I'm purely digital. So it's like, yeah, I understand RGB and hex codes.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, is there not just a free website that just that says, okay, this is your hex code and this is your Panto code?
Oh,
like, to me, I'm like, is it not that simple?
No, it's not, because especially if you go online. So I'll actually use a recent example. So one of our clients, they had like a bright yellow and a black, and we were getting these backdrops printed so that we could shoot stuff. And so obviously a backdrop is printed. So we couldn't use the digital versions. We had to use the CMYK or Panto. And annoyingly, the brand guidelines we had only had the Pantone. It didn't have the CMYK. So I had to take the Pantone, which was, I think it was Sunshine Yellow P blah, 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 some sort of weird name. And so I put that in online, just in Google, just like Pantone this to CMYK. Put that into Google, and then there was with 100 different generator like sites. So I don't know. I went on one, put it in. It said it was this CMYK. I was like, okay, that's fine. Put those values in, and sent it to whoever was getting them the backdrops ordered, and then thank God they checked the colors because they were like, "Are you sure? Because I'm looking at this yellow looks kind of dark. Like, are you sure today?" I was like, "Oh, well, that's what the website said." So I went on and then I looked at a different website to see, okay, let's see what it is, and they had a different color as well. So I was like, "Oh shit, this is going to be a bit more difficult, I guess." And we got there in the end. I think we managed to find the yellow that it might have been. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, it's just one of those things. I think that's why that's why you kind of, like I said, it's like the more luxury brands who are able to spend lots of money on really solidifying their brand, like they'll have everything, like, everything sort of meticulously laid out. And again, I guess for some brands, maybe if they were a digital brand, they're not really thinking about the print. So they never really put that into perspective. So you kind of have to do the guesswork and filling things in. Like there's been a few times where I've just been given the print version of a client, but we're doing their socials. So I need a digital version. So then I would have to then take it on board and create my own little cheat guide sheet of their brand from a digital perspective. So yeah, it's just one of the things you kind of have to do.
I'm still a bit confused by this. So is it not like a definitive this color translates to this, and is it subjective? Does it change each year? Like,
it is.
I'm struggling to understand why if this has been the sort of industry standard for years, and it's colors, it's like I don't understand how it doesn't just translate.
I don't know
like
either.
This exact thing to this exact thing, and there's no debating it. Like this is the translation. Because to me, but then maybe I'm just totally naive.
I think it's like a formatting issue, really. I think some people prefer the CMYK format, and then others prefer the Pantone. Because I think I'll say like Pantone is like the god tier of color. Like they're like high end, super like. I think I remember I watched a documentary about Pantone once, and like every scientist or person who creates colors, they go through an exam where there's like maybe a wall of 50 different pinks. Like they get their eyes sort of tested to be like, can you see all 50? So once you can, you fail, and I guess you can't work there anymore because they're like color experts. So like that's how pretentious I guess Pantone is, which is why I don't really like. I'm like, that's why I said the Pantone color book is like so expensive, and it's like this amazing thing. And I guess any brand that uses Pantone, like I said, is seen as more luxury and high end. Places like Tiffany, the Tiffany teal color, that's pretty much Pantone. And maybe it's even named after them. I don't know. I haven't looked into it, but it's like some brands, it is all about their color. Like, Rolex will have their Pantone color. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's a formatting thing. Some people prefer CMYK, some prefer Pantone. It depends on who you're going to. So the people that we were getting the backdrops from, they use hex codes and CMYK. So it was, it's whoever's format works, I guess.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm sure some of our audience are far more.
Yes. Yeah. You can ask a color expert for that.
Yeah. In the know about this than me. I'm still absolutely bamboozled. I'm going to have to watch that Pantone documentary to make any sense.
Yes.
But no, it's very interesting. And I think that's a point of a highlight for me, of me being like, oh, I understand how colors and brand guidelines work. And then you say something like that. I'm like, oh yeah, I don't have a clue. But there's so much, because I do think branding is one of those things that I'm very new to. So I think I listen to the Uncensored CMO podcast. What more is there to listen to? And like, oh sure, like purple means luxury, and what not, green means environmentally friendly, and beyond that I'm like, nothing else matters. But obviously there's far more to it than that.
So I came from like a branding sort of background anyway. Like I worked at a place called the AM Partnership, and our clients were RBS, NatWest, and Ulster Bank. And let me tell you, their colors, like those brands were very color heavy. I think I worked on it when RBS was still blue. Now it's purple to match NatWest. And so, they've all sort of merged. But it was all very much like, you could tell this is not the NatWest purple. This is the wrong Pantone and stuff like that. So that's sort of like why I know all that. Like, I kind of wish, do I need to know? I don't really care about Pantone. I'm fine with CMYK. But it's just one of those things that you learn. Like, this is like the finesse. This is you showing some pride and some love to your work. Which I know, like, you're a video guy, and you've obviously got your ways of showing the love and your finesse and the care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, hey, maybe when we do a sequel to this episode, I'll have watched that Pantone documentary and actually maybe have some idea on the technical sides of choosing your colors and how those translate.
Yeah,
that'll be my homework.
Have you ever had to get a backdrop in the right client color?
No. Maybe I will do by our next episode. So I think that was super interesting actually, and really on that technical, that just showing your technical superiority for sure in the best way. So I think,
and you with Da Vinci.
I try. Literally, Alex has taught me everything I know. But so to end, I think is there literally one piece of advice or that you wish you would have known sooner that we haven't really explored yet, or do you have a prediction for how illustration animation may change over the next 5 years? Is there anything else you would like to share with our audience, if anyone is listening?
I think, I mean, something that I wish I sort of learned early on, I guess, is just how collaborative things can be and to not be so precious. How you said, like I was the same in college. And again, I think a good college environment is one where your teachers are always like, oh yeah, no, this is great. Even if maybe behind the scenes they think this is dog shit. It's like you should still always leave, feeling some love for your work. I think no matter what, regardless, it's like you have created this. This has come from you, maybe, the image or the colors weren't what you wanted. Thing is, you still set it up. You set up the file, you named your layers, you set things out, you added all the bits that you needed to do, and then you hit export. That's still yours. You did that. It's to love the things you do and have pride in it. I think it's very easy, I guess, depending on where you are in your life or what work you're on, or maybe you're just not feeling a project. Like, it's very easy to then just try and just get through it. But, end of the day, if at any point, even if it's like one little thing, oh, you know what, this image doesn't look that good, I'm going to add maybe some contrast or something just to elevate it. Give it that little touch of the one little thing. And that makes it a bit more yours. Because then, you'll export it, it'll go, but you're still feeling happy that you did something. Because I think for me, I just want to feel useful. Like, my work doesn't need to change the world or anything, but if it's just a little thing that I'm adding or putting in, I'm like, you know what, yeah, I did something, and I'm happy with it. So yeah, love what you do, even if you hate it.
Nice. I think that's a perfect way to end this week's episode. So Ayesha, thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode of the Not a Scooby podcast.
Thank you, Jack. Love this.